Hey everyone, it's Jessica Kramer with MRC-TV. Today we're speaking with Christina Bennett from Live Action to discuss the aftermath of the midterm elections and what the results mean for unborn babies across the country. Christina, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So as Live Action has noted, California, Michigan, and Vermont voted to enshrine the right to abortion as part of their state constitutions. Pretty liberal states, so really no surprise there. But does this show why there needs to be a federal protection for the unborn?
Well, I think it shows a lot of things. I think primarily, even before we get to that question, it just shows that people are unaware as to what really happens in abortion, that they're undereducated, that they're many times ignorant. And it shows that pro abortion forces are pouring millions of dollars, even $500 million, into advertisements. And so many people are making decisions without actual knowledge. But of course, I would support any protection for preborn children across the country, but I think ultimately it just comes down to the fact that many people are still uneducated as to what's really happening in abortion, and so that's why they're voting that way.
Do you really think that?
Absolutely, I do. I was one of those people. I knew nothing about abortion, and I grew up in the state of Connecticut, a very progressive liberal state. I went to high school and college, and I had only heard abortion mentioned in school as a woman's right. And I really knew nothing about the history. I knew nothing about genocide and how the African American community were targeted. Everything changed for me when I found out in college that my mom walked out of her abortion appointment. And then I began to research on my own. But I was very ignorant. And I know there's so many people that were in similar situations.
I think what stunned a lot of people were the more solidly red states like Kansas back in August or Kentucky, where voters voted against an amendment that says that there's no right to abortion found in the Constitution. What did you make of that? Because that stunned me.
Well, again, I really do think it comes down to the fact that when we're talking about abortion, if you say the word abortion, to one person, they're thinking abortion. That is a violent act, that is dismembering of a child. To another person, when they hear the word abortion, they're thinking that's a woman's right, that's liberation, that's reproductive justice, that's self care, that's freedom. And so, depending on what you've heard or what you've been told or what you've ingested from the media, when you go and you make your vote, you're making it based on that information. And if you have the wrong information, then you're voting to have a right protected instead of voting to protect an innocent child's life from being dismembered. And so it is sad and it's even surprising. But when you don't have correct information, people vote accordingly.
I think for me, at least, I could see how somebody wouldn't know the ins and outs of particular abortion procedures, but I mean, the concept of like needing an abortion is when you're already pregnant, so that it is ending a life. I feel like in 2022, do you really think that there are that many people that are completely ignorant and unaware, or do you think that people are just selfish and that a lot of people know it's a baby, they acknowledge that it's a baby, but they still think that the woman has this bodily autonomy that supersedes the bodily autonomy of the unborn child?
I definitely think it's both. I mean, we are so selfish as a society. We've just been trained to want convenience in every single thing, from our food to our phones to everything else. And so we've been trained that way. And to have, a throwaway culture, people that are not valuable, like the elderly, we want to pass assisted suicide, or the unborn, we want to promote abortion. So that's definitely the case. But at the same time, even when people know that, and I say this as someone who worked for 4 years at a pregnancy center, and I would watch women who were pregnant have their ultrasound and they would see their baby for the first time. And I remember one particular woman said, "Is that a baby in there? Is that a baby in there? Is that a baby in there?" And obviously, she knew that it was a baby, but it was this kind of a moment of realization that, wow, this is actually a child. And so even when they know, okay, I'm pregnant, of course they know that they're pregnant and they're having a baby. That's really different than knowing the corruption of the abortion industry, knowing the violence, knowing what actually happens, that a child's dismembered, that they're incinerated, that they're treated as medical waste, that they're thrown away, knowing that their baby body parts are sold on the black market or sold to universities for science, knowing that many women are left wounded with botched abortions, perforated uteruses, all of those different things. I think that's another level. So live action, for example, we have a series called What is Abortion? And they're videos that we play from former abortion doctors. And we take them to the street and we show people. We show people videos of these former abortion doctors describing what actually happens in an abortion. And people will say before the video, oh, I'm pro-choice. Yeah, I'm definitely pro-abortion. Absolutely. They'll watch the video and then like 4 minutes later, they'll say, oh, actually, no, I don't support that. I didn't realize it was like that. And so there is oftentimes a veil over people's eyes where they think they know. They could tell you, yeah, abortion is, getting rid of a pregnancy. But when they actually understand the details of it, it can change their hearts and minds.
That's awesome. I'm actually really happy to hear that.
Yeah. Check out the videos. They're really powerful.
I will. Perhaps the most horrific progressive measure that was shot down during midterms was Montana, where voters voted against giving medical care to victims who survived an attempted abortion. Has anyone given an explanation on how these red states, Montana, could land so heartless when it comes to this issue?
There's different theories that people have, and I was just reading a couple articles today, and I know that pro-abortion allies were putting out misinformation again, saying that this would even affect, children, children that were alive, and which doesn't really, make any sense to me when I was reading that. But I think, and I testified before Congress once, and twice, but one of those times I testified with Melissa Odom, who is a woman who at one point was a child that was born alive after a botched abortion. And I testified with two abortion doctors that were on the panel, as well as a celebrity and different people. And so many of them did not want to admit that children are actually born alive after abortion. And it was really hard for them to even discuss that because they treated it as if it was a myth. Even with Melissa sitting right there and saying, I am a person who was born alive after a botched abortion. I was left to die and I was born alive. But they still really couldn't accept that. And that's a congressional hearing. And so if that's happening in a congressional hearing, Busy Phillips was the actress that was there at that particular time. Your average person, your voter, they have been told by people that children aren't born alive after an abortion. And that's just something that pro-life people say to try to trick you into voting a certain way. And so, again, we really need to magnify the stories of people like Melissa Odom and Claire Caldwell, who her brother died during an abortion, but she survived because she was a twin, but she was maimed by the abortion and came out having to have hip issues with her hip, a cast around her hip as a baby because of the attempted abortion. If people don't know those stories, then it affects the way they vote.
Absolutely. Now that the red wave has not come to pass, what do you foresee for the future of the pro-life movement?
Well, we are in a battle. We are in a battle for the states, as people can see. I am in Connecticut. I was born and raised in Connecticut, and it is really dark here when it comes to abortion. In fact, they just passed legislation allowing for nurses and APRNs to perform abortions. And of course, you see wonderful things happening in pro-life states like Georgia, although Georgia is in a battle right now over their legislation. But it's going to be a battle for the states, and it's going to be on the ground. It's going to be where we have to get into our communities. We have to get into our churches. We have to educate people. We have to use resources to change their hearts and change their minds. And we have to commit for the long haul. I became pro-life in my 20s. As I mentioned, when I found out that I was scheduled to be aborted and my mom walked out. I'm 41 right now. And so for the past 20 something years, I have been fighting to see Roe versus Wade overturned. And that was a miraculous thing that many people said we would never see in our lifetime, but I believed it and I did see it. So now it's like, okay, get ready for the next 20 years. I hope that in the next 20 years, the entire landscape of America could look different, that we could raise up an adoption movement, that we could help fix issues for women with maternal mortality and healthcare. And so that women actually, feel like it's a better place to have children, a safer country to have children in. So there's a lot of work to be done in so many different ways, but we need people who will say, okay, yes, Roe is over, but I am committed. Honestly, I want to say until the day you die, as long as you live on this earth, be committed to this for the long haul, because that's what it's going to take to really bring change.
Wow. Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.